78 or 79 years ago, in this big hospital down in Los Angeles, which was called Queen of Angels Hospital. People there today know it as the Dream Center. I was born to a mother and father from Butte, Montana, a year after this fellow was born. And the name of the hospital is Queen of Angels, so I like to think of us as angels, though we're definitely, neither of us definitely are angels. But we're baby boomers. And we were born just as...
No, you're a baby boomer.
Oh, okay. You're a wartime baby.
Yeah, I'm not a baby boomer.
Okay.
That was where they split it off.
Okay, well now we know that. But anyhow, this is Craig Harris, and he's a really good friend of mine. And over the years that I've been in Helena and he's been in Helena, we've gotten to know each other. And the course of our two lives has been quite different from each other. Probably as different as you can get, really. I've told you a little bit about my life in the episodes 51 and 52 of the Electric Bison. And basically, you know, our family came back to Montana, to Butte, 5 generations of Montanans, and my dad got hurt in the mines, and my mother was working in all the hospitals around Montana. And I went through school, went to college, was in the Army, graduate school, came back, worked some more, and here I am. Craig's was quite a different path. And as much as you want to tell us, do you want to tell us kind of what happened in those years for you?
Well, I just started up as a young kid growing up in Wisconsin, where I was dropped off on my grandparents' door as a yearly 1 year old, and left there with my grandparents that had already raised 10 kids, and I had 2 teenage aunts that were still living there for about 2 years, and that was pretty good. And I had a mother for a week once a year, and never met my dad till I was 13, but then I ran away from my stepdad's home at 13, and that's when I met my real father. And by the time I was 16, I was doing 5 years in the Wisconsin State Pen, from the boys' school to the state pen. And as soon as I got out, I left Wisconsin. I was given a business in LA, and being ADD, I didn't last. It was really good, but then I got bored and was on a bike trip and ended up in Lincoln, Montana. And a month and a half later, I've been here in Montana ever since. So.
Well, I thought about what to call this podcast, and what it's going to be about in my mind is adaptability and survival. And I've made some really hard decisions, in my opinion, in my life, that were really hard for me, that I just didn't know I was going to get through it. But I got to tell you, Craig is a real survivor, and he never makes excuses. And unless there's a real reason that is a good excuse for why he's in a difficult situation, but he just amazes me at his ability to adapt. And I guess what I would say, you can comment all you want, but he has all these skills. He's an artist. If you introduce him as anything but an artist, he takes offense. But he truly is an artist. And I had a friend of mine one time. He was the head of Gonzaga University. He was a Jesuit. And I asked him, I said, is it possible for a person to make a work of art out of their life? And he says, oh yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, if we're all works of art, his is a good one. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you, the skills that you learned in the pen. What happened there?
Well, at first, I went in at 16 to the boys' school, and I wasn't really good at school because of my ADD, and the whole shot, and I had dyslexia, so school was always a problem. Well, when I went before boys' school, no, I couldn't go to school. I was the teacher's worst nightmare. And when I got locked up, I finally got stable, or made be stable, and I could do a little bit of an education, but I still wasn't enough to really settle down and get it. And so I just tried to learn every opportunity I could and every trade that I could possibly learn and understand, just so when I did get out, that I never had an excuse to go back. Because there should be something in any paper that I can't go get the job that day, and that's the way it's always been. But my grandmother always brought me up to make the best of whatever the situation. So being locked up, I made the best of it. I didn't just read books because they were hard, because growing up with dyslexia, ADD, and all that, people didn't understand it back in our day. And so I was always wondering what was wrong with me. So the books I read were all on how to improve myself. And I learned that in my lifetime that I'm not a religious man. I do not believe in churches, but I do believe in the higher spirits and something, and I just let them guide me. No matter what ever happened in my life, whether it was a gun being pulled on me or anything else, or like the trip to Florida when I almost didn't make it back, I just said, if this is what's meant to be, que sera. And I would always just get up, dust myself over with no matter what it was, and say, okay, now what? But I always put my faith in the higher ups, and that's what got me. I know that's what's got me by, because I have never had a fear because of that.
What were some of the things you learned in prison? A reform school in prison?
Well, one of them was how to survive. The second was getting my animal instinct back, so you know what's going around you. It's like people talk about you guys going into the military and coming back with PTSD. Hell, I didn't go in the military. I got PTSD. But there's no things out there for, oh yeah, if you got it from being in prison, we have a special class over here for you. They don't have that. You got to go through the military to get it. Well, I'm sorry, when I was 16 and my buddy and I got in that trouble to get sent up, he was 17. He got to go in the military. And if you want to look back on it, the military's glad as hell they didn't get me. Because I never got orders. If somebody asked me to do something, it's fine, but orders, nah. I didn't get along with them at all. And I got all my religious readings every time I went to solitary confinement. That's all the books they'd give you was religious books, and I read a lot of them, and I found out none of them made any damn sense. And the only one I could think of that made any sense was the I Ching or the Indian belief. And both of those are of oneself, not, oh, I got to go look good at church, so maybe I get a contract for this or that,
So why were you going to solitary confinement? Why were you always in solitary confinement?
Well, because when you're young and in prison, you got to back your shit. If you don't, then you become a victim.
What do you mean back your shit? What do you mean by that?
There's always people, and more so in prison, trying to take advantage of younger and less weaker and more vulnerable people. And you have them more so in prison than you do on the outside, because that's why they're in prison. And if you don't stand up for your rights, win or lose, then you become a victim. And a victim I never was. And it's like, out of it, I took jobs as bouncers. And I've never had an hour of self-defense in my life. I just put my faith in what it was and whatever be would be. And in 15 years as a bouncer, I was never in a fight. And still the highest paid one in the state. So, you know, and to me, you know, like carrying weapons, I don't have any desire to carry a weapon. I don't need one. I'm not going to need one. Never going to need one as long as you have the faith. And I read how-to books because storybooks, I could keep one and get 5 or 6 different stories because of the dyslexia. But.
Yeah, Craig, the only thing he could read's got to be upside down and backwards. It's the damnedest thing I ever saw. But anyhow, so I still didn't. So what were some of the hard skills you learned that you knew how to do when you came out? You know, like welding. I know you know how to weld.
I was a welder before I went in. I learned how to weld at 9 years old on the farm.
Yeah.
And I learned carpentry. I already wanted to be an architect before I went in. And so I took architecture until they couldn't teach me anymore. And then I'd go down to the library and get stuff. And I also took masonry, carpentry, and I had the opportunity in Wisconsin, they started the first educational institution in the country, which was WCI, Wisconsin Correctional Institution out of Waupun. And I was the 128th person to get picked to go there out of the state reformatory at Green Bay. And there they had 72 different trades. All the automotive, all the vehicles from the highway patrol and everything like here, we sell them at the auction. There, they brought them into the auto body shop. They fixed all the dented ones and everything else. If they needed engine or mechanic repair, they fixed them all up. They repainted them so that they could resell them for more money to help build it. They also had their own farm where they raised everything, and you could learn that. And they had electronics. Just about any trade you wanted to learn was there to learn if you wanted to take the opportunity. And that's what I did. In the last year and a half, I was given the opportunity to go out and work at a foundry so I could earn money, so when I left, I would have an income. So I was given a pretty good deal, and I took advantage of it.
So that's when you left back to California?
Yeah, I left Wisconsin because being an ex-con in Wisconsin is just, you can't, especially my family, a lot of them were police and stuff and law enforcement. There's just no jobs. They don't give you a break. They just things. So I couldn't find work, and so I packed up and went out to California to where my mother was, and hell, I had work all the time instantly. And I was lucky enough while I was out there that the guy I worked for came up one day and says, "How'd you like your own automotive service center?" And I go, "What? I can never." No, he says, "We're giving you one." And they gave me one. But again, with ADD, year down the road, I'm getting bored. I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. And that's when I took the trip and found Montana.
So how are you, how were you received when you got to Montana?
Well, Lincoln, Montana are the most loved people in the world. I came there as a complete stranger. And, the other guys, like some from Pennsylvania and all this, being one of their first long hairs to move in there, really tried to play games with me. They'd sent me out to places you can go hunt there, and you get out there and find out, no, you can't. And every single one of them backfired on them anyhow, but I ended up being a pretty good friend of a big rancher up there. But the first winter I was there, we were down to, I worked at the post yard, there was no work. I had like $30 and it had to last, and didn't know where any more was coming from until the post yard opened back up again. And I went over to the market and bought a bag of hot dogs and bag of buns and some little bit to go with it. And some friends of my wife had come up and brought their family, so I had to try to feed them too. And the lady in the store, not knowing me that well from Adam, said, "Is this all you're going to get?" I go, "Yeah, well, this is all I can afford right now until I earn some." She says, "No, you live in Lincoln, Montana, and winters are rough here, and as long as you live here, you have credit here." And I never wanted to live anywhere else again as long as I lived, but then logging quit and everything, and I had to come down to Helena. So.
How's Helena worked out for you?
Oh, I love Helena. Good people, a great mix. It's just, a lot of towns are real cliquish and everybody hangs out in their thing. And it's terrible. Helena is cliquish, but they're open to everybody else. So it makes it a very, well, it's like our coffee shop years ago. I mean, there was you, me, Ray, Mike, and the other people that would come in. It was a great diversity, which all went in different directions.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we got one up there in politics, and you, and then car sales and teachers. I mean, and that's what makes Helena real nice, other than lots of sunlight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Craig's got to be one. Were you one of the original people at Sturgis?
No, because Sturgis started back after World War I.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know
Oh,
that.
yeah, back right after World War I. The guys that started it were a World War I group called the Jack Pine Gypsy Jokers. And one of them had a Indian shop in Sturgis.
Indian motorcycle.
Yeah. And so every year they would get together and have a picnic. Well, and then his friends would come, and if they didn't have motorcycles, he'd go get some out of the shop, and they'd go for rides around the Black Hills and all that. And then each year, their friends would bring some friends with them. And I didn't start going until 75. And then by then it was 36,000, 40,000, and it was only 4 streets on Main Street, and everybody camped in the city park. And the chief of police, who had turned out to one of my very good friends, Bill Stewart, he had get up on the back of a flatbed truck and tell everybody welcome to South Dakota and to Sturgis, and that they're more than welcome to have a good time, and here'd be a bunch of other big wheels for the law enforcement, and he'd say, after he's all done, and to remember, there's nowhere to hide if you try to run. And he saw how much money we were making as tattoo artists that he quit being the chief of police and opened Black Hills Tattoos in Rapid City right across from the Air Force Base. We worked together for years after that in Sturgis on Sturgis. So.
Yeah, Craig, he kills me sometimes. He had a tattoo parlor here in town. It's really well known. What was the name of it? It was
Rocky Mountain Ink.
Yeah,
I was
Rocky
the first licensed tattoo shop in the state of Montana.
Yeah.
And because I was with a group that started the National Tattoo Conventions, and we're trying to make it clean and safe all over the country. And when after 4 years of touring, I decided to come back to Helena and open a shop. And then I fought for 8 years here trying to get it safe, legal, and clean. And then the new people came in it. The talent is absolutely wonderful. But when it first started, the attitude, cutthroat, and all that, I'm an artist. I didn't need to I just went and made a living doing other stuff with my metal.
Yeah.
But, and that's why I got out of it. I got into it because I was crippled up pretty bad.
From what?
Well, I hurt my neck bouncing. I was chasing a guy across the field and fell into a ditch and broke my neck. And then a year and a half later, I slipped and fell with a 300-pound door and damn near broke my lower back. And I was sitting at home, and I was part owner in a motorcycle shop in Kalispell, and I was sitting there and I'm all crippled up, and a friend of mine calls me, Lyle Tuttle, who was at that time, and still is, the most famous artist in the world, and asked me what I was doing, and I go, absolutely nothing. And he says, well, get packed, we're coming to get you. And I go, what? He says, we'll explain it. And they got here, and he says, we're starting the National Tattoo Conventions, and we're backed by OSHA and the whole shot, and away we went. The next 4 years, I did nothing but travel from state to state, did the tattooing, and then we created a monster.
That's what it seems like everybody's got tattoos.
Oh, yeah. No, Cody doesn't.
I don't, not yet.
But it just, when I was in it, you couldn't talk to somebody and get one bigger than 4 inches by 4 inches at any one time. I mean, it was just, can't get any.
Yeah.
And now, hell, they want their whole back, their arm, and everything else. And
yeah.
It's beautiful art out there, and I think some of the most talented people I've ever seen in it. But they don't stop to think is, when my group started out, we only had 4 colors, and most of us had to make all our own machines.
What were the 4 colors?
Black, blue, red, and green. And the first guy I ever got tattooed from was Detzel out of Milwaukee. He was the only one to ever be inside the city limits in Milwaukee. And he created the color yellow. Before that, they used mustard. And so he was the first one, and I got my first tattoos the same day from him when I turned 18. And they finally closed his shop, about 15 years ago, because he couldn't read the IDs. But he'd been tattooing so long that he knew every pattern by heart, and he'd put that sucker on you, and he could see what it is, and still tattoo you. But I was in the boys' school, and I just turned 18, and they were giving me a weekend furlough before they were sending me up to the reformist thing, and I went down and got my first 2 tattoos. And after that, I used to just draw patterns for guys in prison, because I didn't like taking the chance of tattooing somebody or making them things. I just drew the patterns. And when I got out, some of the people that I drew the patterns for were doing Sturges and called me up, said, you got to start doing it. So I did it from 75. Nobody around here knew that I was tattooing. I'd go there, they'd have all my equipment and set up and work, then come home and pay all my bills.
That's something, we're talking about adaptability. I swear to God, if a piano falls out of a 10-story building on him, the next day he's got a plan for what to do next.
Well, with the pieces.
See what I mean? That's the truth. Yeah.
Well, I lost everything I owned up in Kalispell in the fire when I hurt my back. And I didn't have a dime left. The Red Cross gave me $100 the next day. And I went down and bought a hacksaw and a $10 Dremel and 2 shirts and a pair of pants. And I got the tools from the pawn shop, and then I went over and sat on a friend's porch and made pipes out of his antlers. And that night I went down to the bar, sold 10 pipes, had me $150, went back the next day, made 15 pipes. And that's how I started all over again until Lyle called me up and got me on the tattoo trail. So.
Yeah, he's really quite a remarkable fellow. I swear to God, he's right now. We're talking about the farmers market coming up, and it's like visions of sugar plums dancing in his head. But you know what you want to do, and then you know what you're going to do with the money once you do it.
Well, it's not just the money. I get to show all my stuff to people.
Yeah. No, that's great. They do.
You know, and my favorite part about the whole farmers market is the kids and the pets. That's why I give away suckers, and I have for years. Is because of watching the expression on the kids and everything else.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. You know.
Yeah. Well, the thing that struck me is I was thinking, I really value Craig's friendship and what I've learned from him. But when I was thinking about what we were going to try to do here with this podcast is, I'm really concerned that maybe not our generation, maybe our generation, but the years since World War II, Americans have tended to get lazy or ignorant or something. I hate to say it, but it's true. And like when I came back from the Army to the town I'd gone to high school with and played football for and was a local whatever, the newspaper, when I decided to run for office, the newspaper people would say, there was a lot more newspaper reporters then, and they would send me all these questionnaires, and they would say, where were you born? Well, I wasn't sure. I sure as hell wasn't going to tell them I was born in Los Angeles, because you and I are the original Californicators apparently. But I'm thinking, why wouldn't I tell somebody that? So I would answer it. I'd never lie, but I'd just say yes, I was born. Right?
Well, I used to say I wasn't responsible for where my mother was.
That's good too. But why is it that way? I mean, in Montana, we had just finished this huge experience where, 58,000 Montanans that got off to war, and another half that number had, when Montana was only 500,000 people, so 1 in 10, another half that number gone out to the coast to work in the armaments industries, and they'd all seen all kinds of terrible things, and they'd come back and they'd been treated well or badly, and then a lifetime or 20 years, how was I when I got back? About 22 years later, people get after you if you're from another place. And I go, we should not have allowed that to happen. It's very closed-minded,
It's not where you're from, it's who you are and where you are. It's not about where you're from, because you're not responsible about where you're from until you turn 18, and then it's up to you to figure out where you're from. And so it's just like they made you quit telling jokes back in the old days. There was the police jokes and all this, and the Congress passed a law against it.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. So instead of telling the ethnic jokes, it became jokes about different states.
It's North Dakota.
It's like the Montanans picking on the North Dakotans, and the Wisconsinites picking on the Minnesotans. And it came down to thing. And everybody not everybody, but the majority of people always have to pick on people they think that are less fortunate than they are.
I'm afraid that's true.
And as far as the selfishness that we have in our society today, that's our generation's fault. We spoiled them frickin' kids nothing but rotten. We gave them, we had to work for the things that we wanted. We didn't let them work for the things that they needed.
Yeah, some of them, I know some do. That's probably the general.
There's some great kids out there, and there's some great people. But the generation that it's our fault because of the way they think right now.
Yeah.
And you've got to go back to the so-called, people call me that, but the hippie generation, which I never was. I was a flower child, but there was a difference between a hippie and a hobo. They said was the difference between a bum and a hobo was the difference between a hippie and a flower child, because one would work for a living and the other one wouldn't. They didn't want to. They wanted to live off other things. And that style became, every kids have to be different than their parents. They rebel because of that. Well, then the next generation, instead of being earth and all that thing, became greedy and capitalist because they were given everything.
Yeah, I was watching, I didn't really know about these podcasts till the election, and I think the Republicans used them to a fairly well, and the Democrats were caught with their pants down, me being one of them. But I was watching some of the more popular podcasts, Joe Rogan and All In. And they strike me as a bunch of rich frat boys that they think they got the world by the tail, and they don't have a clue.
No, it's like politics. I think anybody that truly wants to be a good politician should be made to live on minimum wage for at least 1 year.
And do their own income taxes.
Oh, and to experience that, because the majority of them have no idea. I mean, out of all the people we have in politics, when it comes to the word poor, there is none.
Yeah.
And they don't care about those that are. I mean, we have a plague in this country that's worse than the epidemic that we just went through. And that's homelessness. And people that, they don't care. They don't want to do anything about it. There's no profit in it. And that's what it's about, greed and profit. And next thing you know, they're going to be like some of our other countries where there's trash piled up all over everywhere, and people are living off of what they're picking off the trash because they haven't decided there's no profit in getting rid of it. So they just dump it in areas. There's places in a whole island and people live there. That's what they do, is sort through the trash. And that's what this country's turning into, is they want people to live off the fucking trash of the other people that don't give a damn. And you can't have a society like that. People, you got to have open hearts, and you got to care about your fellow man. Otherwise, you have nothing. So, and I'm sorry, but churches aren't doing it.
Yeah, that's why I like Craig. We just got it. It's like we lived in parallel realities and came out together at the end. Seriously. Well, I had a kid. I was walking down the street. I go on walks every day, and I was over across from the Real Food Store in that U-Haul parking lot, and I was walking between two U-Haul trailers, and this young guy, I mean, he had to be in his mid-20s. He comes around and he goes right by me between the two U-Haul trailers, and as I'm going by, he says to me, "Heil Hitler." Well, I had just got done working on a book about the Battle of the Bulge and how many American soldiers were killed, holding out against Hitler's SS Panzer divisions and armies. And it was a brutal battle, a million people fighting against each other. And Hitler thought we were a bunch of mongrels. And then this kid says to me, "Heil Hitler." Well, it's a good thing he was as young as he was, because I turned around and he goes, "Wait a minute, mister, don't do it. You're going to regret it." Well, if I could have caught him maybe, but he was too fast for me. But it was stunning to me.
What gets me with that one is the swastika. There is no evil in that swastika from the beginning. There's two directions in which they go. One means revival, the other means good fortune. It wasn't until that idiot came along and made it something other than it is. And it should be, all of that, I mean, history should not be forgotten or forgiven, but it shouldn't be relived. And when you keep bringing all that up and making symbols that are for hundreds and thousands of years are good, you turn it into something evil, that's totally wrong. That should be ignored and look into the good of what that symbol means instead of the evil from it. The way he had it was revival, and that meant everything came back to him. Well, and also revival is good fortune when it goes the other way. So like so many things, the American people, and it's got to be worldwide, I'm not that familiar, but they don't see the facts and things, they only see what they want to see in it. It's like my dyslexia. I can read a book and okay, I'll accept that story, but I know damn well that when I pick it up, I'm going to get a different one. So when I'm done, which one do I accept? And it's the facts you accept, not the other. And we're wasting our time. Come on, World War II is over. That's all over. Quit being prejudiced on anything. Open up your damn hearts and welcome the world, because it is a world. It's not countries anymore. It's a world.
I'm beginning to see it that way too. I mean, it always has been a world, you know, exciting to get out and see it, be around people. But this whole gated community mentality is like, no. That's something entirely different. That's fear.
Fear mongers. Yeah. And if you'd put your faith, like I have all my life, you shouldn't have a fear, because you're accepting what the good Lord has there out for you.
Yeah.
It's like I've never had my door locked. My door is always open. Everything I have is there. If you want to steal it, well, it's your karma. It's your, you know.
Yeah.
And that fear is the biggest thing we have, biggest problem we have all over. And it's people being feared. It's people in the city being afraid to get out of their houses. And it's because they truly haven't opened up.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's the Indians, they say, I mean, white man lost their animal instinct. And that's, if you don't have a shield, which the white man puts in front of them, to so-called protects them, then they don't feel the little things that are going on around them. It's not till somebody punches through that shield that you feel it. Mm-hmm. Well, the Indians, they don't put that shield up, because then you feel everything around you.
Yeah, I love the city of New York, just being out in the streets and seeing what's going on around, you know. You're right.
If you walk through those streets without that fear,
yeah,
those that are looking for those type of people, vulnerable people, can smell that fear.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't show it, they leave you alone.
Yeah. Do you notice that when you're in prison? That those
yeah.
The predators notice that?
Even you could be the weakest kid in the prison, but as long as you stood up for yourself, you were respected. It's when you wouldn't stand up for yourself that you had no respect. Yeah. But no matter who you were, if you stood up for yourself and said, hey, and it's like me, I was a good-looking young kid. And
that's hard to believe, man.
Oh, I know. I mean, it's rough. I have to go back for memories and look at pictures now and then. But that's a fear that you need to accept when you go in there, that they're going to pick on you.
Yeah.
And if you don't stand your ground, they're going to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And it was like me. I mean, that's okay. I don't mind going to the hole. Let's rumble. You know, and that's the way. If you want to get bad, let's get bad, win or lose. And that was just the attitude I've always had.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And I found out that I'm an artist. I don't hit nobody with my fist. I grab them and throw them on the ground and control them. Never beat on them. It's not good for either one of you.
Yeah.
So, and I've never. Once I got put in the ring in the reformatory, the first time, and they put boxing gloves on me and boxing gloves on the other guy, and I looked at the coach and I go, "What's the?" He goes, "Well, we box." And I go, "I've never boxed in my life." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "Well, you might as well tie my hands behind my back and let them hit me, because I have no idea what to do." He goes, "What do you do?" I go, "Well, it's kind of a mix of street fighting and judo."
Yeah.
I says, "I'm going to grab them, I'm going to throw them on the ground, and I'm going to threaten to break something. But I can't do that with boxing gloves on, you know." So
Yeah.
I could never box, never even thought about it or anything else. I just, the fear of being hit, I'll just do what I can to keep from that.
Yeah. One of my first memories was in Butte, and I swear to God, one of those guys was Jack Kerouac. They all looked alike after the war. And at Christmas, one of them got me a set of boxing gloves. I was 3, and he tied them on my wrists, and then he goes, "Go ahead, punch me in the nose. Punch me in the nose." And I thought, "What the hell do I want to do that for?" He goes, "Come on, punch me in the nose right here." So I whacked him one, and it was bleeding all over the place. And I tell you what, I think I was traumatized by all the blood. My mother's in the kitchen going, "Leave that kid alone." But that was Butte. That was the way Butte was.
Yeah. Hey, up in Link, when I first came here, cowboys, they just like to do it for the fun of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you ever have a cowboy try to cut your hair?
no. No, I never had a cowboy that really wanted to try anything after once.
Yeah.
And I was kind of lucky because I was kind of, being a farm boy, a little redneck myself, and there was the hair, and it was like when I first at Lincoln, if they thing, and then after they got to know me, it was any cowboy giving me trouble or something, one of the locals would go over and go, "Nah, that long hair is just to hide his redneck."
That's good. I like that. I like that.
And, you know, it's like Chrissy Gehring that owned the Wheel Inn, and her dad was 10,000 acre ranches. I took care of him the last 6 months of his life. And I was leaving her bar one time, and this cowboy, it was rodeo time, and this cowboy was just giving me all kinds of hassles, and I was shooting pool and the whole thing. And I was leaving, and I had a drink in my hand, and he turned to Chrissy, the owner of the bar, and says, "That long hair is stealing a glass." And Christy just turns around and said, "You know, that man's left more than he's ever taken." And then Eddie Grantier, who was my first redneck thing, walked up to the cowboy and said, "Would you mess with me?" And the cowboy told him, "No, Eddie, I wouldn't." He goes, "Well, I won't mess with him, but you keep mouthing off."
Yeah.
And it was just the way it was here. The cowboys just loved to fight. And I could never understand that.
Yeah.
And
They also help you on the highway.
yes, they do. I got to admit, I've had 2 experiences here in Montana that have really been. I borrowed a friend's truck one time to go to Kalispell. And right by Helmsville, it blew a tire. And I'm in a suit. I get out, no jack. This was way back in the 70s, and no, early 80s. And truck pulls up with a couple of cowboys in it. They go, "What's the problem?" And I told them jack didn't work. And they, "Oh, no problem." They jacked up my truck, changed the tire, put everything back where it went, and then thanked me and drove off. And I was on my way to Sturgis with a friend one time when we were in his van, and we were going over Rock Creek Canyon, and we get to the top, and he had a flat tire, and he thought I was just a bull, and pulls out, and his jack doesn't work, and a pickup truck pulls up with 3 cowboys in it, asked what the problem was, and I told them, and they pulled out a jack, jacked it up, changed the tire, and thanked me as they drove off. And I go, "See?" And then the next year, I'm on my way to Sturgis, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's a truck with a horse trailer on the side of the road on 90, and I pulled in behind him, and I go up, and can I help you? And he goes, you got to be from Montana. And I go, why? He says, because you're the only type of people that would stop at 3 o'clock in the morning on an abandoned highway to help somebody.
Yeah.
And how can you not love this place?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've been thinking about, some of the things you said. I keep thinking about President Trump, because I from what his niece says, he was beating on littler kids when he was younger, and then he clearly doesn't forget if he feels he's been wronged, and he's the one that uses the word retribution, and and yet he comes across as the victim all the time, and I'm going, and people are buying that. Have you figured that out? I haven't figured it out how that works.
The only way I can explain it is the way I've heard it when I've asked. I've got some acquaintances that are Trumpies and stuff, and I asked one of them one time, I go, why? And younger generation and kid, and he says, because we just like to see it fall apart.
Yeah.
And, that's democratic society. Why? And it's because we quit teaching true history and the truth in schools. We're only teaching what they want them to hear. They're saying you got to have a college education, when that's why we have no business here in the country, because there's nobody with any trades, because they took it out of the schools. And then they blame it on other things. Well, you can't take the things that make people who they are, like music, shop, and those gymnastics. Now we got obesity because they took gymnastics out of school. Those are important parts of growing up that I wished I would have had the opportunity some, but with dyslexia and ADD that they didn't know anything about, I was stupid. I couldn't keep my grades up long enough to play any sports. And I was good at sports, but couldn't get the grades up.
Yeah.
And then I realized if I could, with ADD, could I stay there long enough because I can't even learn to play an instrument, because I've never finished a game of Monopoly. But with the Trump thing, is that people would just go back. I mean, they did a story on him when he was in college, and he was a young Trump, and the egotistical and things that people said about him then. And then if you just follow his life, how can you say that he's a good businessman? He put a casino out of business in Jersey. I mean, he's put an airplane company out of business. I mean, how many other things have he filed bankruptcy on? He is not a good businessman. He thinks that power is the only thing that gets you anywhere. I mean, I'm not going to break. I want everything I want my way. And come on, in realization, anybody that signs their goddamn name with a felt tip pen has got to be a sick, self-centered individual.
I'm going to have to see if I have. Don't think I've done that, but
I mean, come on. It's the whole thing is his power trip. I mean, he wants to truly, if you want to really go all, he wants to rule the world. He doesn't want to be president of the United States.
well, whatever's going to happen there is going to happen. What I find myself thinking about when this adaptability and survival is, well, if people have, we've had the best of it. I think we have.
Yeah.
But, like if Social Security starts being interrupted, farmers and ranchers are not able to get what they were hoping for, and all those kind of things that require some significant changes in people's lives. The big pickup truck, when the gas gets,
Well, now they got, in Texas now, they're going to have driverless trucks.
Well, that.
Yeah.
What could,
all on electricity and stuff, electric ones
Yeah.
without drivers. But, it's, there's just all kinds of different stuff that needs to be done. But you're not going to get it the way it goes because you cannot run government like a business.
Yeah, no, that's the first thing I
Because
learned. Yeah.
business doesn't care that you don't have a job. Business doesn't care that you don't have food on the table. And business doesn't give a good goddamn unless you're working for them. And what they're trying to do is a republic, which means all the large corporations and big businesses take over. They kick out the middleman, the small businessman, because they don't want them giving them competition. And they want you to work for them, live in their houses, and shop at their grocery stores, and you become an ant to the corporate world. And that's, if people would take the time to look up the definition of republic, they would see exactly what it is. And what gets me is they think every Democrat wants to go to that, what do they call it, type of government,
Socialism?
Yeah, when the true Democrat, for one thing, doesn't really, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but they don't truly want to do that. It's like their gun control. They don't want to get rid of the Second Amendment. They just want you to realize that it was done when we had muskets. And there's just things we have to realize as we go along. And people aren't doing that. They're just shining it all on and saying, oh, whatever will be, will be. And sure, that's a good thing as long as you've got good faith, but you can't vote in stupidity and expect it to turn out right.
Yeah.
And this whole thing about the trade embargoes and all this, man, it's not going to help the American people to have to pay more for everything else. And even if they bring all that stuff back to the United States, the Americans per citizen won't work for peanuts, so you got to pay them top dollar 3 times, 4 times more than any other country, and your prices aren't going to go down.
Yeah.
And the farmers, they need one of the richest farmers in our area. My grandfather brought up 10 kids on an 80-acre farm, which only 40 of it was under plow. The rest was grazing and stuff for the cow, the livestock. On that, he supported 10 kids and me with the produce he produced. And there was a guy just a couple of years ago that was in Iowa that had an 80-acre farm, and he raised enough produce for his local area and made $85,000, $90,000 a year. I mean, big farmers, they go up and they grow all one thing or 2 things, and it leaves them with their hands tied when they should be growing many different things. Not so much to be shipping it overseas, depending on that, but the local.
Yeah, yeah.
And not just, okay, I got to grow wheat or all this. There's just so many other different things that will grow. It's the jojoba, which grows in the desert with no water, puts off a bean that puts off 50% oil, and the rest can be used for chicken feed and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just not utilizing the opportunities that are here that nature gives us. It's the same when they put their solar panels up. Instead of putting them high enough off the ground that they can do something underneath them, they're wasting the land that's there.
Yeah, yeah.
That could be utilized.
I've gone back over the times in my life where I've had to make some really tough decisions. You get in a fetal position, you're in trouble. You just don't know what's going to come next. You got no control, and that's when somebody's watching over your shoulder. And my wife, Kathy, my second wife, and the really best friend, she has this saying about the baseball bat theory, that most of us, we're doing the things that are going to hurt us, and we can't see it until somebody hits us with a gosh darn baseball bat to get our attention. And I see some of the things that people are doing now when they should be kind of cutting back, I think, but who am I to say? And I'm going, boy, I hope the baseball bat isn't too tough. Have you ever had that experience?
Nobody's been there to swing it.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on my own since 13 years old.
How do you know when you got to make a change?
I don't, because what I did was, it's not working. It's time to make a change. And if you put your faith out there, it tells you, okay, you're going the wrong way. That's why this isn't working. Quit fighting it. Go the way in which it does work.
Yeah.
And people say, and fight that when the universe is trying to tell you this is wrong.
Oh, that's the same thing. That's it. That's what I'm saying.
Don't fight it anymore. Yeah. Just relax and do what the universe wants you to do, and go into it with your eyes wide open and your mind wide open. And it's like I said, you dust yourself off, because there is nothing out there that is so bad that if you have faith, not religion, faith, he says, have faith in me.
Yeah.
No exceptions.
Yeah.
And when you down and out and you're feeling like the whole world's coming apart, you've lost faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to say, okay, it'll all come out. It'll all be all right. And, you know, if it isn't, well, karma's been known to be a bitch.
Well, you know,
you only make the situations worse.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, 100%. 1939, just as the Second World War was starting, there was a woman named Dorothy Thompson, and she was in Europe following what the Nazis were doing, and she put together some pretty good pieces of writing. But one of the things she said was that fascism is a total revolution. You know, it changes everything, and and she says there's going to be a war. And but one of the things she said is that it's a belief that we should go back to tribalism, and that the fittest, you know, is survival of the fittest. That's kind of what, you know, law of the jungle. And my brother Pat, who also graduated from Queen of Angels Hospital, he was looking at that phrase, survival of the fittest. And it's not survival of the strongest.
No.
It's survival of the fittest, the one that can adapt. And that's the trick. Is I like your idea of being sensitive to what's going on around you, you know. And
well, it's like in the days of back before we're so populated, they would say, you know, you start out with a small community and you've got 4 or 5 families to start out with, and you're a group. Everybody helps each other. Then it gets a little bigger and everybody keeps helping each other, and you've got a bigger group. But they say by the time you hit a group of around 500 in that thing, there's always somebody that wants to take control. Mm-hmm. And to control and think they know more than the thing. That's just been life throughout our whole life. It's realizing, do you want to be under their control, or you don't want to be under their control? And I know most people, if you're brought up in that situation where you're under control, you don't think of freedom. I mean, being under, this is just part of life. But if you're brought up free, it's really hard to put somebody under control.
Well, we've been free.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. What I'm hoping that our next election, this next in-between one, is going to wake up enough people's eyes that they're going to get the power away from him in Congress to stop what he's doing, because what he's doing is pretty close to exactly what Hitler did.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm sorry to say that. I mean, I'm proud of my government, but this guy is not. He just wants to be a ruler, and he doesn't give a damn about anybody else.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that this election, well, hopefully we can do it all peacefully, because, well, the people will get the worst end of any fighting that goes on, but as a practical matter. But I hope it's a peaceful transition. I really do. So anyhow, thanks for being here.
All right, 2 hours is called on it right close.
Thanks.